Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Pinniped Community Meeting. Today's date is September 2nd, 2021. Just a reminder that these meetings are being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube playlist. And we ask that you read and abide by our code of conduct when you are attending these meetings, which is listed right here in the agenda. If you're watching this from home, we encourage you to join us live. We meet every first and third Thursday of the month at 9 a.m. Pacific time. You can join our Google group to get updates on the project and invites to community meetings. And if you want to join live and have something you wish to discuss with the team or are curious about the project, have feedback, anything like that, this meeting is an opportunity for you to do that. And we ask that you put that information here in the discussion topics, and we'll get to it as we go through the agenda. If you aren't able to attend the meetings, you can reach us on the Kubernetes Slack workspace in the Pinniped channel and on Twitter at Project Pinniped. Additionally, when you're attending these meetings, we ask that you put your name and any organization that you're representing. This is just a way to keep track of who from outside of the maintainers are joining us for these community meetings. And if you are using Pinniped, we want to know those details and the use cases in which you're using this tool. So please follow along this GitHub discussion and put that information in with a comment here. Just a couple of quick announcements. We sadly are saying farewell to Matt Moyer. He is one of the maintainers here for Project Pinniped, and he's moving on from VMware. TBD on whether or not how much more involvement he'll have with the project.
Yeah, so I'll be stepping away as a maintainer, at least for now. But I don't be shocked to see me at community calls and popping into GitHub issues occasionally. So.
Good. Really sad to see you go. All right, on to the other thing is we released 0.11 this week, and we have a lovely blog post that was authored by Anjali. Anyone want to go over this particular release?
Sure. I guess we've got a few different pieces to it. So the main ones are that we have a specific Active Directory IDP. Previously, there was an LDAP IDP, but this is got nicer defaults for Active Directory. And then the other thing is we've got OIDC password grant. So this is useful if you are someone who's got like a service account or something that you want to use with OIDC. It's not supported by every OIDC provider, but I think like it's a GitLab that does it, and a few others. So if you happen to be using one of the OIDC providers that does support it, you can use this feature without popping up a browser.
Also, just quick addition to that, we also have, we moved base image. We used to use Debian, so now we have support for distroless, which is more secure and better for performance because it has smaller image size. Also, I want to give a shout out to Scott Rosenberg. He gave very good inputs for both AD and for the OIDC stuff. So.
So Scott, if you're watching this recording because you're in Israel and this is a horrible time for you, thank you very much, sir. We very much appreciate your help.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And thanks, Margot and Anjali, for that. On to status updates. Checking out the project roadmap. Who wants to go over the updates that we have here?
Yeah, so this is a little bit in flux. So we definitely are, looking to get more inputs on multiple IDP support. We're trying to get validations on the use cases so that we are sure we are delivering in terms of design and the use cases that which are widely used, right? So we definitely would appreciate inputs on the use cases that folks are looking to solve with multiple IDP support. And that's why I say it's in flux, still deciding on that. The other feature that we're working on is improving the security posture with having the token refresh at the supervisor be in sync with the upstream IDP token. So those are the two features still in discussions for some of the other features.
Great, thanks, Anjali. Okay, does anyone have any discussion topics they want to bring up right now? Talk over with the team. Anything related to the roadmap items that you're working on?
I don't know if we want to talk about this right now, but I think we have started thinking about how we would implement the making it so that upstream refresh tokens or whatever your upstream is, whatever the concept of the session is for that upstream, those things should be somehow tied with your downstream session. And so, you can imagine today Pinniped has a concept of your Pinniped session lasts for 9 hours. It's unconfigurable in any way. That's just what you get. You can imagine that configuration just or that 9-hour number just kind of disappears, and your session is not really controlled by Pinniped at all. It's sort of controlled by the upstream. Now, I'm not necessarily suggesting we do this, but I think different people own the IDP, and the different actors control the IDP and the supervisor. So you probably need the knobs at both places, but if you think of it from that frame, if you consider something like OIDC, the refresh token that you get from your OIDC provider, if you get one, certainly you will get an access token, has a lifetime. It doesn't last forever. Right? Today, if an IT admin goes inside of their IDP configuration, let's say it's Keycloak, if you're unfamiliar with their UI, every time you log into Keycloak, it creates a session object, and the admin can see that. So that Mo is logged in to these, he's logged in 5 times versus sessions. You can go hit a little X button and it'll invalidate that session. And the Pinniped supervisor will have no idea that happened. You'll be able to continue using your Pinniped supervisor refresh token until it expires at the 9-hour window. So the hardening that we are looking at doing is some way to guarantee that if the administrator of the IDP changes something that is meaningful to us, that we actually honor that intent. So, in the past, I've seen this stuff implemented in really poor ways, primarily like token inactivity timeouts. So those obnoxious messages you see on your bank website, where like if you for some reason just go idle for a few minutes, it's like, I'm going to lock you out. I was like, but why? I'm right here. Just because I didn't move my mouse doesn't mean you need to lock me out, right? But the reason they're doing that is because it lets them cheat this requirement. Right? It lets them make it so that it doesn't matter if your upstream has been invalidated, as long as you like just sort of go away for a little bit, the session just kind of gets invalidated on accident and sort of covers a bunch of these cases. I think we can do better than that. I'm not saying that we will never implement token inactivity timeout. I think we have to for compliance reasons at some point anyway, but I think we can do better as a baseline. So also, anyone's willing to butt in and say something, I don't need to talk this whole time. the initial sort of gut idea that I had on this was when we get your upstream session. So for OIDC, that's your refresh token and access token, and I guess maybe an ID token, but certainly at least an access token. For LDAP and Active Directory, is the password. Right? When we get this concept of a session, we would create a one-time use encryption key, right? We would store that on our side on the Pinniped supervisor as part of your login session. But we would use that encryption key to encrypt the session, and then hand it back to the client. So we would shove it inside the Pinniped supervisor refresh token as opaque encrypted blob data, right? So what such a design lets you do is, for things like Active Directory, it prevents us from holding the user's password, right? The user's machine always has access to their password because they're going to type it into a buffer somewhere. So by definition, that machine is going to see their password. So I think that machine having an encrypted payload that contains their password is roughly equivalent to that machine having a Kerberos ticket for AD situations, which I think is perfectly benign and fine, especially since it would be a one-time use encryption key, right? Like 128, 256-bit, whatever, like I think would be fine. We already have logic to do this type of stuff for the cookie storage that we use on the Pinniped supervisor, so I think it's pretty easy. I think the biggest unknown to me is last time I looked at this, Google as an OIDC provider does not allow multiple refresh tokens to be issued per OAuth client and user combination. But I don't know if that's actually true or still true. If it was true at one time and it's no longer true. I'll stop there. Anyone have thoughts, concerns? Margo, Andrew, Ben? Yeah.
Sorry, can you talk more about the Google refresh token thing?
Yeah, so from what I've heard, don't have proof, but I've read this, have not assessed it. So if you consider the intersection of the Pinniped supervisor's backend OAuth client and a user, some user identity together, so the intersection of a user identity and that OAuth client, from what I understand, when you log into Google with that creates a refresh token, right? If you log in one more time, like you press like login again for some reason in the browser, like you open the window again, the refresh token from that first session is immediately invalidated. And you get a new one, but the old one is no longer valid. Does that make sense? So if you logged in more than one, like say you had two machines, and say we had implemented this functionality and you have two machines, and you logged through a Google ID in both of them, it would invalidate the old session every time you logged in.
Anytime you logged in with the same client and user combination.
Yeah, so it would mean that if the backend IDP was Google, you could not log into the Pinniped supervisor more than once, which is not necessarily what we want. Like you could say that's super secure, and that might be true. It might be also super inconvenient.
Yeah, it would be weird behavior if you were.
Yeah, it'd be very hard to
if you had two
understand what
computers
was
for some
happening.
reason, like, or yeah.
So that is, I think, an investigation that needs to be done. Where I learned of this from Dex and some various issues that had open, but from what I understood, this is one of the core reasons they never implemented this functionality. Is they just it was hard to implement, and they didn't want to like break stuff all over the place. Now nothing says that we can't be smart and like treat a Google-based IDP special, right? Like we can make a Google identity provider, and we effectively have to get groups out of Google anyway. And inside of that Google IDP, we could have special logic for reusing refresh tokens or something, right? Like we could do magic on the back end to make this all work in the way that a user would expect it to work. It's just not. It's not like it's not as easy as it initially sounds.
The other one that I wanted to mention that's weird is if we ever decide to do SAML IDP, SAML doesn't have any equivalent thing to the refresh flow. You always get just a short-lived claim. Oftentimes in SAML, they use longer claims, like they'll be 1 day long or something. But the only workaround I think we've talked about that would be kind of a different design that could work with that. So in a web application, that's not a problem because you're just interacting with the web application, and whenever you need to re-authenticate, it just redirects you over to the SAML, and then you get redirected back, and you've refreshed your session. You can do that even in I think even in SAML, you could do that in like a hidden iframe. You can even like make it invisible. For us, we could basically act like a persistent web application like that if we introduce a mode where when you log into Pinniped, you don't close the browser tab, you leave the browser tab open, and it acts as a place that your session is going to be alive. It's going to go re-log you into SAML whenever it needs to, and then it's going to provide that sort of refreshed session to your CLI, probably by just re-upping your refresh token or something like that. But anyway, I just mentioned it because I think that's another IDP that would potentially change the design of the way that we want to do refresh.
So I don't think I've ever truly configured like a real SAML IDP. I've toyed with them, but not like a real one. Do you have any sense of how unrealistic it would be for us to ask? Let's say first we implemented this refresh token functionality, and later we add SAML, right? Could we tell in the SAML docs that, hey, the assertion you send us, it needs to be as long as you want the session to last, because if it's not, then we'll just kill. If it's a 5-minute session, your session's gonna last 5 minutes, and it's gonna stop working because that's how long you told us the session was valid.
I'm not that familiar with real SAML IDPs either. I know the names of some we can go try. I've used them a little bit, but I don't really know how configurable they are. Like one of them I know that supports SAML is ADFS and Azure AD. I know they support all kinds of options. You can sort of fully customize the claims. Shibboleth is the other one that's like open source. I don't know anything about how you configure it, but
Yeah.
SAML was like super weird. Obviously, if we dive into do SAML, we're gonna have to level up our SAML expertise the same way that Marco did for AD. So
yeah, so I think even if, let's say, the SAML IDP had the knobs, I'm not sure if the knob is a sane one to press, because you effectively lose revocation, right? Because the assertion is just a signature that's valid until a certain amount of time. There's no, as far as I know, there's no CRL. You can't like ask someone, hey, is this assertion still valid? So that might be a concern. The other sort of open-ended concern is I don't think there exists a secure SAML library in the, like there has been some work to harden existing ones, but the SAML protocol is kind of broken from a security way, like it's just not designed correctly.
We don't have to fully we're not committed to building SAML. We don't have to like design SAML yet. Just to know that if we're designing token refresh, SAML doesn't have a token refresh, and so we might have to have like a workaround for that. Anyway, there are other hard things about SAML, like that there's no Go library that does it and stuff like that. But
yeah. Not on the SAML topic, but maybe on like AD/LDAP. It seems like for generic LDAP, we don't know what the claims are. So like just logging you in again with your password makes sense. When we're doing a refresh, what we want to know is like, is your account still active? Has your password been changed? All that stuff. And we can, I think, get that out of Active Directory without binding to the user.
yeah, there was a concept.
We wouldn't need their password to get a lot of stuff, I think.
We had a concept early on in the project of having identity providers in Pinniped be two parts, like a login provider and a directory provider. and that sometimes you could use Active Directory for both of those, but you also could like combine something like SAML or OADC and combine it with either LDAP or maybe something like SCIM, which is like a REST-based directory service protocol, open standard. Anyway, and so that you could do both of those things. And then we had other ideas why you might want to have like a directory API through Pinniped. We've never really explored that or written down use cases or anything, but that is interesting because you're right, we could use it to revoke your sessions when we see that your directory entry disappears or goes into a frozen state.
Yeah, like if you try to do a refresh and we just say like, hey, we looked at your user and it seems like your password has changed since you last logged into Pinniped. Log in again, we're revoking your session. We wouldn't have to actually try to log in with your password to know that.
Yeah, the concern I have there is I don't know the level of configurability AD has or other systems have around this. And I think it's still safer to do the bind anyway, right? Like, because that is how you log in, doing a rebind to assert that you could have logged in again with a username and password, I think is a much safer. I think we would do that in addition to all the checks that you just mentioned, Mario. We would do our own internal business logic to be like, but are you the same? Like one of the things I'm unsure of is, would we let you continue to refresh your token if your group membership changes? And I think if you get new groups, we don't care. But if you lose groups, we might care. Like, that seems a little strange because if those groups are attached to our back, something has changed about you. And does that?
But we would then return you a refreshed session that didn't have those groups anymore. Like we can change that at refresh.
Right, and maybe that's good enough. I think that's totally valid. I just don't know if that like I want to make sure that we don't surprise an IT admin, right? Like whatever is the least surprising thing, even if it's maybe less convenient for the user. I'd rather go for the least surprising thing possible here. And a lot of this is going to be a real pain with generic LDAP because there's no rules. Like for example, all Dex does on refresh is it does a lookup for the DN and make sure the DN hasn't been deleted, which never happens. You don't delete DNs out of your LDAP directory because why would you delete data out of your directory? So that I think isn't a meaningful check. Yeah, I think there's lots to consider. The nice thing is, even if we do like some of these things, like let's say all we do is just a bind. We don't even change your group membership or anything. We just rebind. I think that as a baseline, we check the refresh token again and we rebind. If we just did that as a baseline, I think we like remarkably improve the security just by doing that. So I don't think I'd be against any design that just started with, we'll just do this. And then the next phase could be, we'll figure out what to do with your groups, and with AD, we'll do extra checks. I don't know what you can do without that. I'm sure there's something else you can do without that, but I don't know that. I have no idea what to do with SAML. It's gonna be awful. Does anyone have other topics? There's other very like, if folks are interested in talking about security hardening, we don't rotate enough keys that we issue, and we probably should. We probably rotate all the things. So like federation domain secrets and stuff should be probably rotated at a much higher cadence than they are. Sort of the, oh, I see Andrew made a chat. No, I think that the comment was from way earlier. Never mind. So we don't notice, we don't rotate secrets for your federation domains like we should. A very consistent cadence, and I think we could, because we issue such short-lived credentials, like 9 hours, right? So that would mean that if you created a new key every day and kept old keys around for slightly longer than a day, there would probably be no overlap. So if I have to like do some math in my head, it's like the TCP sliding window. It's literally what you need to build just with tokens instead of TCP. But if you had that, I think that also would be really nice. I'm trying to think. There's, I think, cookie secrets and stuff. I forget. There's a bunch of places that we generate either certificates, like private keys, or just symmetric keys. And basically all of them are effectively rotatable. The only thing that I can think of that we can't easily rotate is the root CA of like the impersonation proxy, because that one is handed out to clients, so you can't control it. But basically in every other place, we should just rotate all the things.
Even that one, we could start having a system that maybe needs to be configurable, but you could say, yeah, like on a long basis, like on a year basis, issue a new root CA, put it in the trust bundle. At that point, you have a 1-year window, or you have some amount of time to fetch that new kube config that has a new trust root, and then you stop using the old one, or you cross sign them, or there's complicated things we could do there. They all still have the negative property that if I have a kube config today, at some point it will stop working, even though I should still have access to the cluster. But
yeah, I think the one thing in the future that might help is the upstream work on the client code's exec proxy support. We had that, then we could discover the impersonation proxy information at runtime by using the trusted connection we already have with the API server. I think that would significantly reduce that.
for that matter too, we can actually just put the impersonation proxy behind an aggregated API.
Yeah. That would require some real fancy finagling to like get all the headers through that layer just right. But yeah, we could totally do it. At that point, it would become much more reasonable to go that approach than anything else. But yeah, I think we have some options there. Yeah. We don't need to keep going if no one has any other topics. I'll give you all back 30 minutes of your day.
Okay. But before we go, is there anything that anyone wanted to bring up? No? Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining today's Pinniped community meeting. Again, if you're watching this from home, we encourage you to come and join us live. We meet every first and third Thursday of the month at 9 a.m. Pacific time. It's a great opportunity for you to just come and listen in on what the team's working on, anything that they're blocked on. Maybe you can come and join us and become an active contributor, or even work your way up into becoming a maintainer. It's just a great way for you to get involved more with this particular project and provide feedback if you have it. We would love to hear from you. If you aren't able to join us live, just find us on the Kubernetes Slack workspace in the Pinniped channel, and we can discuss more with you there as well. And with that, thank you and have a wonderful rest of your week, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.